it's somewhere 5 o'clock, right?
We're good.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, so I'm going to call a meeting to order. This is February 18th, 2025, and this is the work session meeting for the City Council of Minnetrista. I'm going to make quick introductions here. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor, and council president is Kathleen Letkin, Peter Hickory, Claudia Lacey, and Brian Howard. And then staff present is our assistant administrator, Allie Paulfus. We also have our administrator, Jasper Krugel. David Abel is our community development director, and Paul Falls is our chief of police. And then Aaron Hall is with 8-2S and going to be presenting on our water treatment plant later on. And with that, do we have anybody remote participating? Is it, we have Ann and Gary. So Ann Meyerhoff is our city clerk taking notes remotely, and then Gary. Hi, Gary. Thank you for waving. Anyhow, Gary Peters is our public works director, so we can ask some questions if we have to. And with that, we have quite a lot. That's why we started at 5. One of the reasons on our agenda. So it consists of, we're going to meet our new city staff members, and then we're going to talk about the XL Energy easement over City Hall and police properties, the Woodland Cove HOA crosswalk request, and then we have also had a discussion on whether to reimburse or whether to, it's regarding private items in public right of way. You saw that in your packet, so I won't get into that right now. And then Aaron will update us on the water treatment plant option. So with that, I'm going to start out with Allie. If you want to give us a quick introduction on our new staff.
Yes,
All these members.
so we have Mason.
You can stand up and come forward. we don't fight too hard.
Mason started as our new public works maintenance worker on November 12th. He was previously at Mineral Service Plus. We hired 2 people from Mineral Service Plus.
Yes.
And we're happy to have him here. He was also enrolled in the electrician program through a community college. So,
Great. How do you like it so far?
Good.
Are you out there plowing and shoveling in this cold?
Yes.
And you still like it? All right. Okay. Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. You have a good boss? I don't think you can answer that differently, right? There he is, right there. We're glad to have you on board. Welcome to the team. Thank you.
And then we have Brendan McCarthy. He started as our first engineering technician on January 21st. We poached him from Waconia as their public services technician, and comes with a lot of experience, and we're happy to have him as the role evolves.
Great. And I know you're a Minnetrista resident, as you told us, so you can walk to work almost, not to school probably. So.
I think he's the only one.
Oh, yeah, in Minnetrista. Oh, all right. Hey, we all live in Minnetrista. So. You're in the group. But we're happy to have you. I know this is a brand new position for us, and hopefully you enjoy it here and are prosperous and work well and stick around for a while. So, yeah.
Glad you're here.
And do you like your boss? Thank you very much for coming. It's always nice to put a face with names, and we always approve the hires, so it's nice to have you come and greet us as well as we greet you as well. So, thank you. So next we have the XL Energy easement over at City Hall. You don't have to stay if you'd like to be. Although you're welcome to stay too. So easement.
Yeah, real quickly, Mayor and members of the council. So page 3 of your packet, of the work session packet, has the diagram that probably explains this best. To the point, XL Energy is redoing their transmission line, and you can see it takes a weird jog on the back of what is City Hall and police properties on that page 3 diagram in your map. XL Energy reached out to the city and asked if we'd be interested in them obtaining an easement from us to fix that jog in their line and just do a straight shot if you will, over city property on the rear of it. If I don't know if Jessica can get to the map there, but so what they're looking to do, looking at market rate value, anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 is the range they gave us, is what they'd be willing to pay the city for said easement if you're interested in doing so. If not, the other idea would be a license agreement. Not a preferred route by the city or Excel, but that is another option available to you. Or if you're not interested, they'll just simply put the line back where it was. This obviously is easier for them and more preferred for them. But before they got too far in their planning process, they wanted to figure out if the council is willing to go down this road with them. If they are, then we'll go through the process of having the city attorney review the easement documents and all those details will get ironed out through the process. But wanted to reach out early and see if there's a willingness to go ahead and go move forward with an easement.
Questions?
Will there be any towers on the city property, or will it just go over the city?
They don't know that yet. They haven't gotten far enough in their design to figure that out.
When you say towers.
Poles.
Poles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Likely not, but he didn't know that yet because they haven't. They're just preliminary stages of coming up with plans, so they didn't know that.
It looks like there's a creek and some wetlands there. Is there any environmental concerns with that or permitting that would need special permitting they would need to do?
If they do affect any wetlands, they would have to go through the WACA process. They generally will try to avoid that as much as possible, but obviously that's not always, they can't always do that. So they would go through the wetland review in terms of what they're impacting and then having to replace or buy credits, whichever they end up doing. So.
I noticed in the agreement it said that the city would still be responsible for any pollution problems or things like that.
Yep.
But they could bring that out and start. Is there any way to offer that responsibility?
I don't think so. I guess it depends on what. I guess you don't know what you're going to find, or I don't know what you'd have to correct.
Nothing's been disturbed.
No, it's fine. It's probably just have to stay there, whatever it is, for the pole or whatever they're doing.
It's not like they'd be excavating, other than drilling a hole for the pole.
Correct.
Well, and it looks like that in theory, they're just gonna use the two existing poles, just put a one line through them.
Theoretically, yeah.
So, go ahead.
Finally, $5,000 or $6,000 doesn't seem like much. Our attorney probably cost similar to that, but what's your sense on that?
Yeah, we tried to squeeze them. We said we knew that our council would ask that same question, so we said you're going to have to do better than that. And he said that the only way it could get better is if they were to do an appraisal. But they looked at, they know they're looking at what the value of land is around here, and based on what the value is, that's what their determination was, that it would be the $5,000 to $6,000 range. So there's the risk. They could do an appraisal, and it could be less. Could come back less than what they're offering, or it could be more, but it's probably not going to be a significant amount more.
See, my thought was, how much are they saving by going straight across versus having to redo that money? Is that $5,000 or $6,000? What's it worth to them? But, I don't know. I kind of looked at that number too. Oh, that's kind of low, but yeah.
And that's not any land that we would consider developing at all. Yes, like that.
Right. I think the attorney fees would have to be included. So if they won't go up above the 6,000, then it would have to be, but this WSB is doing this, so we should be able to find out, okay, tell us really what they're willing to go to. I would go a little higher and then also throw in attorney fees.
They would have to pay, they know that already, that they have to pay they're going to have to fill a general service application. We told them there's a deposit, they'll pay the attorney fees. They know that. already asked if they'd go above 6,000. They said that they'll just do it the way they did it. They'll just walk away.
So then why would we, I mean, it doesn't matter. What do you guys want to do? Take the $6,000 and,
Yeah.
okay. They do give us some money every year for our tree lighting and just today, so. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, sounds good, thanks.
Okay. Next is the Woodland Cove HOA crosswalk request. Who's going to take that?
I can take that. This has been kind of an ongoing discussion that we've had with some of the HOA members or residents of Woodland Cove, probably for about the last year, on and off with just various questions. You'll see things like the pedestrian activated crosswalk lights. Those are some of the things that we've talked about in the past with this group, trimming up some of the hedges along Woodland or Kings Point Road in Woodland Cove Boulevard. We've looked at that. We've worked with them. One of the requests that they had at that time was to add a couple of crosswalks to Woodland Cove Boulevard. So we've looked at it internally as staff. Myself, Gary, Allison did a little research, and Paul. That's kind of the core group that looks at some of these requests. The engineering piece does not meet the standard of adding a crosswalk. So to that level, it's really up to city council as far as if they want to do it. I do have a couple of 3 videos, I believe, that kind of, I think it's a doorbell cam or something that kind of shows the intersection. They asked, I don't know if there's representatives. That's your camera. Okay, yeah. So we can pull that up if you'd like. And then I would say talk to Paul. Paul's got, from a public safety standpoint, a strategy about crosswalks and really, one thing that we don't want to do is have a false sense of security. There's a crosswalk there. We have pedestrian ramps. You'll see probably from the videos. There's ped ramps there so people can cross. It's just a matter of people need to be aware of crossing. Now, if there's a certain amount of traffic that increases on that road, then that would potentially trigger adding something, stop sign or something. But right now, just the engineering standards that Allison uses don't indicate that we should do anything at this point. But because we have a request, we've indicated to the group, get a letter from the HOA and bring it to council, and then we can talk about it to see if there's something that this group wants to do or direct staff to do. So
Let's see the video.
yeah, give me 1 second because I think it's actually in my, Allie, are you able to access my folder? Because it's in my city administrator.
I talked with Jasper.
Projects.
And so I disagree with
sorry.
MnDOT standards. And but they go ahead. And what they usually do is they say if it's warranted or not warranted. And then they have different specifications and standards that they use before they say yes, it's warranted. One of the standards is speed limits. One of the standards is number of traffic units that traverse or, ADTs. And then another one is how many accidents have happened. And those are, and then they also look at sightlines. So what are the sightlines at these intersections? Do they meet their standards? I believe the standards are met for the sightlines at this intersection. I think for a crosswalk, I think it's about 300 feet. Is that correct? Right.
Correct.
Okay, so it's 300 feet, both for the pedestrians. They want to make sure pedestrians can see both directions for 300 feet. And they want to make sure that the vehicles can see 300 feet ahead in case people are in the crosswalk or in that intersection. And so that's why, so a lot of times MnDOT and engineers will say it's not warranted because speeds aren't there, accidents aren't there yet. And then because of the number of traffic counts, daily traffic counts. And so, but I think we should also look at it in terms of, do we want to prevent something from happening?
I don't think a crosswalk will prevent anything from happening. Drivers in the neighborhood aren't necessarily unaware. Pedestrians frequently just walk wherever they want. We were driving on Kings Point Road and saw kids just go right through the middle of the intersection, not to the flashing pedestrian lights, push the button, and make drivers aware of them. I think a crosswalk will give pedestrians a false sense of security that cars are going to stop and they don't need to be aware of it. I think with regard to the bus stop, you could reach out to either Minnetonka or West Tonka and ask them to move the bus stop.
Paul, you want
Madam Mayor and Council, I was going to mention that maybe we should take the videos one at a time so we can critique them because the issues are a little bit different. It might be easier to track.
to, okay,
If we go back to the first one, or if you can remember the first one, we don't necessarily have to go back. I will say that one of the things that I noticed in the first video, I mean, certainly the goal here is for safety, but as was mentioned, I don't think just putting in a crosswalk makes it safe. Okay, I think the first video, this video here demonstrates a couple things to me. A, people are capable of crossing the street safely with or without a crosswalk. What I would look at is how long do folks have to wait to cross, as there's so many vehicles that they have to wait a long time. Well, that would be more indicative of the need for a crosswalk. I think we saw a vehicle that stopped coming the other way with no crosswalk. While I think people try to be good Samaritans, that's actually an incredibly dangerous thing to do. If you have the right of way, then go. Don't stop because you're creating a hazard by doing that. And a lot of people don't understand that.
could be that the car was parked though.
Right, and it may have been, it's difficult to tell here, but
Yeah.
those folks with the dog are, they come up to the intersection, they wait, a single car goes by, they look, and they safely cross the road. That doesn't indicate a need for anything. That indicates this works exactly the way it was intended, from my perspective.
Okay.
So,
May I say one thing?
that's,
Hold on, let's watch the next one and Chief.
Did you have anything to say on that one, Paul?
It's the same thing.
I think it indicates the same
Okay.
observation.
Oh, so-
How many are there?
Just read.
Oh, okay.
The golf cart's a whole nother set of issues in the neighborhood.
Right. I don't know that a crosswalk would have prevented that. That's obviously, that shouldn't have happened.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, I'll give you 2 minutes. If you, that'd be great. Thank you.
My name is Aaron Denicky. I live at 4600 Foxville Drive. That camera is mounted on my house, so this is a day-to-day concern of mine and my wife's, being that she works from an office right in that front. Respectfully, Chief, I would say pedestrians have the right of way. Most drivers don't yield to that at all. Even your own officers have not yielded to that. I personally had 3 separate police officers.
Okay, Aaron, okay, we don't need to get into whether they are adhering to it, but why do you feel a crosswalk is needed?
The University of Minnesota did a study a year ago that found that 60% of cars did not yield to pedestrians at unmarked crosswalks. I can forward that study to whoever wants to see it and read through it from the article that I found. At least painting lines and putting up a sign does offer a reduction in those incidents. 50 pedestrians are killed a year in the state of Minnesota. I really don't want to action finally happen when there's a dead child or a dead dog or a dead person being scraped off the road by your officers for something to be done, because it's a concern.
Thank you.
I think something to add would be that this is a sub HOA. The actual master HOA was not in support of putting crosswalks in. This was brought to the master and they were not in support of it. Because again, they don't want parents, kids, anyone to have a false sense of security, that they don't have to look both ways before they cross the street, that they don't have to wait for cars, that they can clearly see that are coming. They don't want them just saying, oh, there's a crosswalk, I can just go.
Respectfully, I think I disagree. I think people do realize that. Before I joined the council, I spent a lot of time in the Woodland area and got to know the boulevard pretty well. And it is a thoroughfare for the community. And there are a lot of new housing going in at the end of it. So I think it's only going to get busier. So people will really go through that particular road pretty quickly. And also behind the townhouses, there is a park. And so that's a big attraction, of course, for people with their dogs and kids to cross this road. And so I think it would be a really good idea because I just think that it should alert drivers to its more residential area rather than thoroughfare. And I would never assume that crosswalks would just go. So would be in support of this. Minnetrista is not nearly as dense as we've been talking about. So I think we need to be open to these things in most communities.
I was really surprised how fast the cars were flying down there. Almost like they were not caring about the kids and the dog walkers. And I do think it gives one more thing to look at. I was thinking about, I don't know the name of the road, I think it's St. Bonnie, not Minnetrista, but you know where that Rush dental office is in St. Bonnie? At the end of that road, they're having the opposite. They want to have like a stop sign removed because they say no one stops. So it's kind of the opposite situation here where somebody fought for a stop sign, but that looks pretty scary. And I think for the cost of paint on the road, I mean, if it could catch someone's attention and make them slow down and be more mindful of someone crossing there, I'd be for it.
Brian?
I have two questions. I guess first, we really feel like the issue is that motorists are not yielding to pedestrians in the street, or is it that people are driving too fast on the boat?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe both.
I feel like if people aren't yielding, I'm familiar with looked up the University of Minnesota study it talked about researching this. If the issue is that people are yielding, I do think that a crosswalk would probably be helpful. If the issue is just that speed limit's 30 and people are driving 45, I'm not sure if I could see that might give people a false sense of security. So I just want to make sure we're addressing the real core issue here. And then the second one's kind of a new guy question: is how much does it cost to put in a crosswalk?
Yeah, so there's the initial cost, right? And I know Gary was gonna try to get some numbers for this. He was gonna talk to the striping guy, but then every year it has to be redone. So Allison, maybe you have an idea, it might be like $500 to put in one crosswalk is what I would estimate it to be.
Between supplies and time.
Yeah, so, and that's just ongoing. The one thing to keep in mind is, the precedent, if there's, more crosswalks, we might get more requests, right? If, so just keep that in mind, because, in this case, it's a crosswalk. We've gotten some requests for stop signs and things like that in the past. And, we really, is it AASHTO? Is that the standards that you guys use, to develop, if the need is there or not I forget. Or no?
It's a uniform traffic control
Yes.
device manual.
Yes.
It's a nationwide standard for where these applications go.
So, we try to lean on that, but then if it's outside of that realm, that's where city council can come in and say, wow, we think we should put it in here for the betterment of the community. So as far as costs go, about $500 a year per crosswalk. So in this case,
And then you have a sign.
Yep. Then there's signs.
There would be 2 signs.
Yeah, but you got, the 4, if you want to do all 4, all 4 crosswalks or just the 2 across the Woodland Cove Parkway. At the 2 locations, then we're probably talking, with the signs are in one-time cost. They're probably about $250 a piece one time, both directions you need them. So you're probably $1,000 there plus another $1,000 for the striping, and then probably figure $1,000 a year ongoing.
How far apart are?
The 2 intersections?
They're really close. It's right here and then right there. And there's no, Cranesville doesn't need one.
Right, maybe just do it at 1.
Well, and if we do this, you're gonna get more requests for these because they're gonna want one at Bellflower and Woodland Cove Boulevard and Lotus where the new pool is. Eventually they'll want one down by where the pickup ball courts are. Everyone will start requesting these. And then whatever precedent we set with this, they'll be like, well, they got one, why aren't we getting one? And
I mean,
like,
why isn't Woodland Cove thing?
because the HOA said, no, the master board said, no, we don't want crosswalks. We don't think they're needed. We think it will give people a false sense of security. There are plenty of kids in the neighborhood who do not look for cars, who run across the street. The golf carts, a whole other set of problems. They're out of control. The kids driving them don't stop for anybody. And I don't know if you could tell who's driving it, if it's a kid or an adult. Because the kids drive through, like, there's no tomorrow on the parents' golf carts. But that was the bad one, and that was a golf cart. That wasn't a car. The cars that went through, there was plenty of time for people to stand there while one car passed, and then they could cross. There wasn't a steady stream of cars going through. The
But
references.
if kids are running across the road, wouldn't a crosswalk help alert drivers that there's a crosswalk ahead and that maybe they need to pay close attention?
Well, but the parents should also be teaching their kids to stop and look for cars.
They should, but if the kids aren't, or the kids are not paying attention, that's, I think, the concern is.
But a paint on the road isn't gonna.
Well, let's ask the chief, just.
But Chief, can I just ask one more question? Do you feel that your neighbors and your community members feel the same way?
Yes.
Then why aren't they all storming the gates of the HOA and demanding this?
It's a city street. It's not an HOA street, it's a city street. If we're talking about the street that's south of there by the playground, that is an HOA managed street. That's a private drive for the residents of the townhomes. Woodland Cove Boulevard is a city of Minnetrista owned street.
And hold on just a second, chief.
Madam Mayor and Council, I think we can all agree that we want our streets to be safe. But I'll be honest, just slapping in crosswalks every time someone comes here and asks for one, especially when they show a video with a car, I didn't see an issue. There's nothing wrong with people understanding that. I heard a term about an unmarked crosswalk. Is that
Yes.
an unmarked crosswalk? It just looks like a plain intersection to me.
Every corner is a crosswalk. That's from the Minnesota Department of Transportation.
Well, okay, I disagree. I think an intersection is an intersection. A crosswalk is a designated area designed for someone to cross.
Respectfully, sir, you're wrong.
Okay, Aaron, we're not arguing. Yeah. Because.
We're trying to work through the problem. My point isn't that I don't want to do something for you. My point is that sometimes you can slap up more signs. It doesn't fix the problem, it makes it worse. You can put up more stop signs. All people do is drive faster between them because they're so frustrated. And the same can happen with crosswalks. It might be helpful if we could pull up maybe that stretch of roadway and see, it's hard to know just talking about it, how far is it to the next crosswalk?
Yeah, so there's
Actual marked crosswalk.
a crosswalk about 300 feet to the east.
Can you bring that?
Just put up on Google Maps.
Yeah, so there's a crosswalk. That's where we'd like people to cross, but we understand people cross at
Talking about going the trail.
yes.
Yeah, there's marked ones with the trail right here.
But pedestrians generally cross at the closest.
Cross and then walk on this side of the road and go down the side.
But we have sidewalks leading to the crosswalk. So I understand that some people don't want to walk 300 feet to a marked
But I mean,
crosswalk, but that's why it was designed.
no, that's just a trail.
Jeffrey?
Well, are you saying then every intersection should have a crosswalk? Because that would become so cumbersome that it would actually take away from the point of having a crosswalk. It doesn't draw awareness, it just makes it so confusing that.
The boulevard.
So the current marked crosswalk is how far from Foxglove?
Right, well, which part of Foxgrove? Because there's two entrances. This is the marked crosswalk right there. And then Foxglove has two entrances. So-
Which one? There, in the
So
park.
the park is right here. And this trail goes to the park, or there's a sidewalk right here that they can walk on down and then get onto Huckleberry, which is the Red River. But there's a sidewalk there. And
That's more than 300 feet though. It's probably 500 or 600 feet.
So
Can whoever's running the map just point out the location that you're requesting the crosswalk at and then
Right there.
so it'd be right
That's
here.
what you want.
Yeah.
That's one of them, and then the other one is at Cranesville.
And then the actual crosswalk is further to the east, okay.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's the crosswalk for the trail that goes across, it has nothing to do with crossing Woodland Cove or getting to the park. That's on.
Well, you
Or
can
across
just
the
park
River
from the
Cove.
trail.
You sure can, but no, they walk down that way to turn around and come back again.
I have.
So did you measure it to the first Foxglove?
yep, it's 350 feet to the first Foxglove and then 950 to Cranesville. But there's also
Yeah, it's one of those.
yeah. So you can see there's, if you look, there's a ped ramp, 3 ped ramps. So it'd be this one. So yeah, it's 950 feet.
And that's a pretty good distance. I mean, 900 and some odd feet is a good distance. Me too.
It is, and I want to make sure people can still cross there, right? We have ped ramps. It's just the pedestrians need to be alert and aware that, and I believe the way that the law states is, you don't get the right of way as a pedestrian until you enter the street. So if you can be sitting on the ped ramp, I believe that's the way Paul has described it to me, is you can be, 5 feet away from the ped ramp, but as soon as you enter the curb line or the street, that's when the car needs to yield legally. So, if somebody's walking up there and a car drives by at 30 miles an hour, it probably might feel like they're driving pretty fast. But I know we've had our speed trailer out there significantly that collects data. And Paul knows, and Allison knows way more about this. I'm kind of faking it, but there's perceived speed and actual speed. So when somebody's driving by you at a really, 10 feet away and they're driving 30, it seems like they're driving pretty dang fast.
But it's interesting that the pedestrian has a right of way once they enter the street, even if they just put out there. I never knew that. I always thought cars had the right of way. Unless there was a pedestrian crossing, then the pedestrian has the right of way. That's how I always thought. That's what I
I
thought.
assume you have the right of way once you're in the intersection.
But you can't, it also says you can't just jump out in front of a car either.
No, I get
You
that,
don't
but
just get to jump in front of a car and say, well, I have the right of way.
right, right.
The whole idea behind this design is to use common sense, of course. And so,
So at what point would a pedestrian crossing be appropriate there or warranted there? When we get 1,000 ADPs a day? I mean, is that?
Madam Mayor and Council, maybe the engineer can answer maybe actual numbers, but from my perspective, I'm not opposed to a crosswalk. I just think we need to take a logical approach. Otherwise, we're going to be putting crosswalks everywhere, or you're going to be putting crosswalks
Okay,
everywhere, and then they kind of lose their effectiveness.
okay.
We want them to be obvious and have some meaning and make sense in the right places. I'm not opposed to a crosswalk, but I don't think we should put one here, there, and everywhere, because it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to create confusion, and it is going to create a false sense of security. Whether there's a crosswalk or not, I always taught my kids and my grandkids that you don't ever rely on someone else to see you or do the right thing.
Right.
You need to make sure that it's safe, and then you decide. They don't decide.
Well, and the argument for putting one at Cranesville is the bus stop, correct? But there are bus stops all over the neighborhood that don't have crosswalks with tons of kids on them. And you don't need a crosswalk. The bus has an arm. The kids can wait on the other side of the road till the bus shows up and then cross when the arm is out. That's what they do by my house, off Creekside, off the really big one on Creekside and Woodland Parkway. Like, you wait for the bus. Most kids are sitting in their parents' cars anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
that because buses do have flashing red lights and whatnot. I'm just wondering about the Foxglove one, if it's warranted there.
I mean, it's a natural
If you left there,
block.
I've got comments and I won't say anything else anymore. The problem with Woodland Cove Boulevard is that coming down the hill, coming out of the new subdivision, first of all, there's no speed limit signs heading west on Woodland Cove. Heading east, there are none heading west. So they're coming down, it's a hill a little bit, they pick up speed. The problem with Woodland Cove is there are no actual houses with driveways coming out on the Woodland Cove. We have company streets. A little bit different when you get up in the other subdivision. There's houses all along Woodland Cove. Can't get going too fast, but people are pulling out of the driveways. Not the case all along here. And they pick up speed. I walk my dog every day through there. And same thing to Aaron. You gotta watch walking across that street because people are not going 30.
All right.
Yeah, it is a main thoroughfare.
It is a main thoroughfare, right? I would not put crosswalks all throughout the development. I don't think so, that's necessary, but what is the speed limit? Is it 30? Okay, yeah.
So, and we don't put up, sorry, just for the speed limits. If there's no stop sign or no speed limit signs, it's 30. That's the way the law is written. So if you don't see it, if you don't I mean, I've taught that in driver's ed. So, if you don't know what the speed limit is, you don't see a sign, it's 30. That's.
All right. Well, let's, any change of heart or any other comments? Ryan?
No, I'm still not entirely convinced that the issues, whether it's a stop sign issue or a crosswalk issue, that's where I go, because we hear a lot of them. I know that people do speed through there. I see it every day. And I'm not sure if a crosswalk is going to fix that. But if that's what we're considering right now.
Well, we're not considering stop signs. We're just considering a crosswalk, and I'm not sure stop signs do slow people down. I'm not sure, but, and then the question is, even if they weren't speeding, would that still resolve any safety issues for pedestrians? I think that would be the question. So I think to the chief's point, we should have some kind of criteria on which to base a crosswalk so that we don't end up, I mean, I don't oppose putting a crosswalk in here. It seems to me like it makes sense because people, there seems to be some kind of, division between the trail crosswalk and then this one here. And then also there's a park destination, so it seems to me like they would be using that crosswalk frequently. Having said that, I still think it would behoove us to maybe establish some criteria to determine how we can then not approve a gazillion of them throughout Woodland Cove. So we say, well, this is here because it meets this or this or this criteria. Kind of like MINDA, but we don't have to have those stringent of, standards. But then that way, when somebody comes and says, well, we want one on the next 350 feet, or we want one, you know what I'm saying? Then we can say, no, this is our criteria. So this is why this one is here.
So then we need to set the criteria and determine if that intersection meets the new criteria we're setting.
Right. And so I would say have the police and staff kind of put together a criteria to use by which we would then determine with where in the future, or if this one meets that criteria, and then in the future when we get more requests, then we can use those same criteria. So if, let's say up there by the pool, somebody says, well, we need a crosswalk here. And we say, okay, here's the 3 or 4 criteria that we have. Does it meet those criteria? It does. We put in a crosswalk. It doesn't. We don't put in a crosswalk.
And when you say crosswalk, are you talking about putting the flashing signs as well, or just striping the street?
Well, again, that would be what's more effective or what's better.
So if I may, we do have criteria that we use, like from the engineering standards. We would need guidance from this group as far as what those criteria are. Because I'm kind of drawing a blank as far as something that's not subjective and more, you want an objective, like
Yeah.
yes or no, right?
For instance, in this case, the crosswalk would lead directly then to this park back there. So, something like that. Is this intersection a destination? For instance, does it lead to a destination or an immediate
You
destination?
can't do that in that neighborhood. There are parks everywhere. I mean, then you put a crosswalk at Big Woods and Woodland Cove Parkway, and people already blow through the stop sign that is there.
But
And it leads directly to the big park. So that criteria right there would mean that we would have to put in a crosswalk there, and people blow through the stop sign. They're going to blow through the crosswalk.
well, how many stop sign or crosswalks could there or would there potentially be?
1, 2, 3.
And have we had requests for other areas?
Madam Mayor and Council, I think I've had a number of conversations over the last several years regarding this neighborhood as it continues to develop for crosswalks, probably more so for stop signs
Okay.
than crosswalks, which kind of became the same argument. I'm not an engineer, so I can't answer, is there some kind of a requirement that says crosswalks have to be so far apart? I don't know the answer to that. And so,
I mean, I would think that there would be some kind of a distance.
Madam Mayor, if I may, so included in the packet, there was we had somebody from our traffic area provide some guidance as far as looking at the crosswalk requests in there. And it's on page 21 of the packet. There is a flow chart, if you will, as far as what components go into a crosswalk analysis. You'll see in there, one of the first decisions, after the first decision or the first question is no, it talks about an engineering study. So when we look at the engineering study, it does look at the volume of pedestrians going through the neighborhood, certainly the speed and the volume of traffic going through there. And then also included in that flow chart is the distance from the other crossings. So it does walk through some of the evaluation criteria when looking at crosswalks through there. But certainly an engineering analysis is a lot more robust than what the council is looking for in this instance.
I mean, I don't think we need to spend $8,000 to be told that cars are traveling faster than 30 miles an hour, or that there's, people crossing here. Yeah. But I think one of the things that would be good to know is if a crosswalk were to go in at Foxglove Drive, how far apart would be an acceptable distance? Because I think that would then limit the number of crosswalks. Is it 350 feet? Is it 700 feet? I mean, how far should they be apart? What is a reasonable and safe distance? Because you don't want them at every intersection. I understand that.
And I would, if I may, I would say that's up to the city council, because right now, I mean, we obviously went through an engineering evaluation of the roads and the road configuration when it was put in. It didn't warrant any crosswalks. So if city council says, oh geez, we want to have crosswalks every 300 feet, well then that's now the standard. If we follow the engineering standard, it's done.
Yeah, but so engineering standards say how far apart?
I mean, I think it depends on the type of road and the speed and all those different factors, which I believe are factored into the analysis of this when they're initially looked at. But if that's something you want to look at, I mean, then we're talking a significant amount more money to do this consistently throughout this neighborhood and possibly other neighborhoods.
Excuse me for saying this, but if I lived where you lived and this was a problem that you are very passionate about, I can see it in your face, I would have all of my neighbors in this chamber. I would have brought all my neighbors because, I mean, if it's that if you say all your neighbors feel this way, then.
So let's do this. Our next meeting, what I would suggest, our next meeting is March 17th is our next meeting, because I won't meet on the 3rd. It would be good for us to hear from more neighbors. So bring your neighbors and sign up under persons to be heard, and ask the council to consider a crosswalk. We won't consider two, I'll tell you that right now, because those are because the one where the bus stop is for children getting on and off the bus, that should be addressed with the bus company. If they're not putting out their stop arm with their lights flashing, that's the bus company's issue. If you want a crosswalk here by Fox Club, because there's a park that people like to go to, that's a different story. So come with your neighbors, as Councilmember Lacey said, then we can decide if there's going to be more. In the meantime, we can kind of look at how far apart we might want to have these crosswalks. We won't make any decision on May 17th, but at least we can hear from March. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We won't make any decisions on March 17th, but at least that'll give us some feedback and some information. So,
Work session.
no, do come for the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Come a little bit ahead of time, sign up in the back, there's a sign up sheet, and then we'll hear from you. You get a few minutes to speak, so you don't have to be elaborate. We just want to know how many people really want this. I think that'll be good for us to know.
And letters work too, from your neighbors.
Yeah. So,
No, I mean, more than just you.
Yeah.
Get all your neighbors to write letters.
All right. And thank you for taking the time. We do appreciate that. All right, next item then is the private items in public right of way.
Yeah, and I can talk about this briefly, and Allison and Gary's here to kind of fill in. It's we are having some audio problems, so but this one is pretty straightforward. So generally, when we have a reconstruction project, there's a lot of work that is done in the right of way. So the area outside of the curb line that people generally, I guess I shouldn't say generally, but sometimes they have stuff in there like irrigation, invisible fence for your dogs, those types of things. What we've been doing and what we noticed that the 2023 project was, there's a lot of city funds that get tied up, and it actually delays the project pretty significantly to finish these things. The way our ordinance reads is that you can't put anything in the right of way. Now people do, right? They want to have their grass watered and things like that. But what we're suggesting here is to start the policy potentially in 2026 when we have another reconstruction project potentially, and kind of put homeowners maybe on those projects and just in the city in general, if we're directed to, that they are responsible for the things that they have in the right of way. So they would have to proactively have an irrigation person come out, or proactively have an invisible fence person, or whatever else you have in the right of way. If you want to keep it, it's on the homeowner versus on the city. Now, a couple things to note. I don't know what the right way to say this. There may be people that are taking advantage of this throughout the project.
This year, we decide that, because
Well, there probably won't be much work in the right of way this year for 2025. No, it's mostly within the curb line. So there's a little bit of curb repair, but we're not anticipating much outside of that. So you could, this is kind of a PR communications thing. We got to make sure people know, but it's a lot. Hey, I want you to do this. I want you to grade this. This was different, and we take pictures of everything beforehand. So we know exactly what the site was like. But in order to get the project to move along, the city ends up doing a lot of this work, irrigation repair. We get some instances where people take it upon themselves to repair the irrigation and then send us a bill, and it's like, no, this isn't how this works. But for the sake of the project and getting it done in a timely manner and final accepting it, we have done that recently and in the past as well. So what we're looking for is discussion, potentially direction, and if the direction is to kind of put the residents on notice that, hey, the stuff that's in the right of way, people might not even know what the right of way is.
That's the problem.
So it's, a lot of people think I own up to the curb. Well, no, it's actually, 3 feet back, 10 feet, 15, whatever it is, that's a problem, but you should know. You should know that. So you're kind of putting the onus on the property owner to know where the actual right-of-way line is. And then if they have anything in there, they would have to proactively get that moved before the project. And then if we would go in there and there's something in there and we, damage it during the project, it wouldn't be the city's responsibility to repair.
So the reason I'm for doing this, but not in 2025, is because we already, as you know, tonight we're going to be awarding the bids, and construction could start as early as June, I think. I mean, and so that doesn't give any current homeowners that are in this round in 2025 enough time to move anything that they might have. And like Jasper said, there really isn't any this year. I mean, it's if any, would be very minimal.
I mean, that would be plenty of time. When we tore up our backyard, we called and they came out and moved our sprinkler line exactly when we wanted to. I mean, if you find out now, you could schedule it for May and get it done.
And ideally, if people have to move it once, we'd say put it on your property, but then have your irrigation heads water that area, but not actually have it be in the area. So there's ways around it. It's just a lot of times they put the irrigation line right at the curb line and then shoot it back, towards the house or whatever. So there's a lot of this. I know that it's been a somewhat frustrating point on our end, because it does delay. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra work for our engineering technician or WSB, whoever's doing construction administration. It's a lot of extra work. So.
Does our city building code prohibit building stuff in there?
Building, yeah.
Well, it prohibits you from putting it in there, but people do.
Oh, because I know, like, when sprinklers were installed on the builder, they're right up to the curb.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of this, I don't know if it's a gray area, but it's unenforced. A lot of people do it. This would be a clear indication from city council, hey, enforce your ordinance. Don't allow people to do it.
Well, one of the suggestions I would have is that when a building permit comes in, to actually make the property owner, if it is property owner, a lot of times it's a builder, but make them aware that, hey, do not put this in the right of way. Don't put your fences, invisible fences, and your irrigation systems in the right of way, because you may have to move it eventually.
For the sprinklers, can't we include that when we check the soil and everything to make sure there's no sprinkler line in it?
A lot of times that's done after we do our inspection, the irrigation's installed. So a lot of times we'll do like a final grading in the fall and they'll install the irrigation in the spring after the grading permit's been. So sometimes yes, a lot of times no. But I think it's personal responsibility of the homeowner if we let them know, and I think we're trying to be reasonable with alerting them and providing them the information. We put it on our website, on social media, things like that to try to get people to be aware. But there are a lot of people out there that don't know what the right of way is, where the line is.
We get people that complain about when we do a road, what is it called? Not reclamite, but anyhow, the little stones.
Oh, seal coats.
Yeah, seal coating. And then people call and say, it's all over my yard. Well, it's a foot beyond the curb, and they think it's their yard. And so, no, it's not. Too bad. It's there. You can move it if you want, but it is in the right of way.
I do think we should keep replacing trees though, if the residents want it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with trees.
I don't think that's
So
going to change.
I like the trees.
Do you agree we should have them move it? Do you want to move it this year or next year?
Starting in 2026, makes sense.
Next year.
I concur with that.
Okay, so in the meantime, we're gonna start making it known that, hey, if you have a street project coming and your stuff is in the right of way, time to move it. Yeah, time to move it. Okay.
And we can incorporate that into some of the meetings, the neighborhood meetings that we have to make sure that they understand that. So everybody on the project should know. Now, there will be a lot of people that still have stuff in the right of way that, we need to make sure they understand what that is. Try to educate.
All right. Okay. Then next, water treatment plant options and discussion. Aaron, you are up.
All right, I got her here. Here you go, sir.
All right, I'm back. Madam Chair, Lieutenant Council. So, so an update, I guess, from last meeting. I guess there's some questions on design size. Are we designing too big of a facility? So review some of the water system planning work that we've done to try to give a little bit better sense for your future demands and some of the assumptions we made. We'll talk about some of the filter options that estimated costs that we looked into, and then we have some recommendations. So, and I understand the chart on the left is a little small, but it's the best I could do.
Tiny is the word.
Yeah. But when we started, when we did the water system plan, we looked at Met Council projections. We used 2040, their 2040 projections, which is the best we had to date. And that basically, we let us assume we have 3,800 households served by the utility in 2040. 90% of those homes would be on water. And then following 2040, and this is for your entire city, following 2040, we assumed 100 new homes a year, and 90% of those would be connected to the utility. So that's some of the assumptions that went into water demand development. By 2080, we assume the city would be fully developed at about 21,600 people and 17,650 utility connections. So also in some of our growth projections, we looked at what we call peaking factor. So this is important as we get into some discussions later on, but essentially that's the ratio of your max day demand against your average day. So between 2019 and 2023, the city of Minnetrista averaged a 3.6 peaking factor for their south system. This is just for the south system now. You can see on like the image there, the green is the south, the blue is the north system. So we're not focused on that right now. For reference, the DNR, when it comes to water supply plans, typically recommends a peaking factor of 2.6. And that's very common in metro communities. So you guys are about a whole point higher than most communities. So I think you know that. I'm just trying to kind of give you a sense.
And that's an average. I know there's been summers where we have been even higher than that.
So we take our population projections. So we just look at the south system. We take our population projections. We take our, again, this is small, I apologize. We take the average gallon per capita per day times the population projections and then times the peaking factor. Gets us to our max day. So that's how we come up with what we think you're going to use in the hottest day of the summer. That's what we have to design to. So the green is the historical, and then the white is everything projected for. Again, this was from an older study, so 2024. We now know, but we projected about 1,360 gallons per minute would be the highest demand you would see. So that projects all the way out into 2080. So if we're looking just at the south zone, the Kings Point water plant will produce 1,000 gallons a minute, and in 2050 we would need an additional 1,700 gallons per minute to max data. So we use 2050 as kind of the new reusable planning target for capital infrastructure. So that's why I highlighted that, because I think it's important for reasonable planning. Can't build to 28, but so 1,700 gallons per minute would get us, assuming storage is a separate issue, assuming we had enough storage, an additional 1,700 gallons per minute.
Additional. So we want to be pumping 27 or filtering 2,700.
Yes, additional 1,700 beyond the Kings Point water. That's assuming a 3.6 peak factor.
And that's going out to 2050.
Yes, that would get us to 2050.
Okay.
So you've seen this graph before, this chart before, but that red line, that's the 1,700 gallons per minute. So that's where it would get us to. If we would design to the 2,100 gallons per minute, that would get us to about 2060. So that's an additional 10.
Yeah.
Going back to the peaking factor, now if we reduce our peaking factor to 2.6, which is the DNR recommendation, that moves that that it reduced the demand in 2050 by 700 gallons. So then we would only need 1,000 gallons per minute at the new cold water plant. It's important for later discussions because I'm trying to kind of bracket what you guys potentially might need in the future. So if I go back to that chart, you can see that green line, the peaking factor of 3.6, that's basically the trend you're on. If you keep your current peaking factor. If we move to a 2.6 peaking factor, that pulls you down to the red. So you can see what that means for the length that this infrastructure will provide the service that it needs to provide. That when reducing your peaking factor significantly down to 2.6, you get a lot more life out of the infrastructure you have.
Well, life, but you can service more people.
You can service more people. You're able to. It's less investment.
Yes, right.
So, and again, I wanted to show you, just to give you a perspective of how big should we build for this Woodland Cove and how optimistic are we that we can drive that peaking factor down and how quickly we're going to grow.
So question, because we're talking peaking factors, which means irrigation, since now going forward, we're talking about requiring developments to put in stormwater ponds and pumping from stormwater ponds rather than using ours. So how can we, I don't know how you can do this, I'm not the expert, you are, how can you factor that in? Because we might be at that 2.6 with going forward. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, and we look at the peaking factor as kind of an average of the community, but we all know that there's portions that use more and portions that use less.
Right.
So what you're speaking to is anyone going forward is not going to be on a municipal system for irrigation. So they're naturally going to have a much lower peaking factor, which will over time dilute your 3.6 peaking factor and pull that down. You're never going to get rid of the current people that are on the system.
Right.
So you're always going to have the load we currently have, but you'll naturally bring that peaking factor down. So you're just diluting what you already have, essentially. So with that.
So more question on the peaking factor. Do we have like a long-term, is that number, the DNR, a long-term one? Because looking at the average rainfall for the last 5 years, that particularly dry compared to the long-term rainfall in the Twin Cities.
Yeah. And I think 2023 was particularly dry. Just recent things I've been looking at, that was one of the drier years on record. And so, which doesn't surprise me that your peaking factor was north of 4 that year. So that definitely drove up your average a little bit. But the 2.6 that the DNR recommends is, it's just kind of a global recommendation. It doesn't, it's not specific to. So it's a target. It's a target. They know you're going to be high some years, lower than some years, but that's the target they want to see.
Do you know what we hit last year for 2024 yet?
Give me a second.
So in order to answer maybe, so climatologists with global warming and so on, they're anticipating actually to have not more rainfall, but more heavy events. So in other words, in fact, we're seeing that already with when we do our stormwater pond designs, they're already requiring different events. It used to be every 100-year event or whatever. And so then now they know that they have to design it differently because we get more extreme, thank you, rain events. So not necessarily less rain, it's just going to change how much we get when, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you'll be wetter and drier and hotter.
Right.
More rain barrels.
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Last year, 3.4, so a little bit lower than 2023, but still more than 2.6.
And then the other thing too to keep in mind is there are some already in Woodland Cove that have the stormwater pond system. Mm-hmm. And going forward, most of the development is going to be in the southern system, and they're going to be required to be on stormwater ponds as well. So I'm sure, like you said, Aaron, it's going to dilute it and come down a bit. Plus, what's happening too is when you first build your house, people are putting in this sod. you're watering enormous amounts, you know, I mean, just ridiculous. Whereas once those have been established, then you're gonna start watering less. So even the ones that are currently in what they call, let's just say, the ones that are currently on city water for irrigation, they're gonna be watering less.
Only if they change their settings.
Yeah.
Which I found out 2 years ago, a lot of people didn't.
And so that's education and so on, and gonna continue working on that. But,
And, you know, from the engineering standpoint, we struggle to be optimistic
yeah,
because we need to design a system that is prepared for the worst day that
Right.
we're ever going to have, assuming everyone does the wrong thing.
Right.
So, you know, we have to keep that in mind when we're designing these systems, but for you and needing to make decisions on planning and infrastructure investments, understanding kind of the assumptions goes a long way to at least help us. So summing all that up, I think 2050 is a reasonable planning. It's 25 years. It's the length of typical bonds. When we look at the projections of within the range of those peaking factors between 1,000 gallons per minute and 1,700 gallons per minute would be your reasonable targets for additional capacity, not consideration of storage. So we're recommending, you know, considering a phased water plant construction to try to help manage the capital cost, but also to provide the capacity you need. And some of the discussions we had last meeting were steel filters or concrete filters. So we looked at that. I talked to a couple of suppliers and they provided me quotes for steel filters. Unfortunately, steel is very expensive right now. So, as you might expect. So,
I can't get it from China. Sorry.
Right. Yes.
Never mind.
And this is kind of what we saw when we entered the initial study, that steel filters were expensive, which allowed us to go a different direction. But we looked at it again, hoping that we could come up with, I'll call an incremental kind of expandability option. So we did our best and we went, so item B is the layout we currently have. So that would be a water plant that produces 2,100 gallons per minute. It has the 750,000 gallon clear well, and it has the larger chlorine system that's details. But so we estimated that was 23.2 million. So based on some discussion we had with city staff, we looked at reducing the clear well down to 600,000 and going to a smaller chlorine system without a scrubber. That's option D. So we were able to remove, through some just design adjustments, we were able to remove 1.4 million by doing that.
What do you mean with no scrubber? What is that?
So gas chlorine, if you ever have a leak, in a 1-ton system, I was recommending a gas scrubber so you could address the chlorine gas on site. And
If you had a leak.
If you had a leak.
If you have.
With 150-pound cylinders, they're much smaller. An alternative option is automatic shut-off valve. That's what you currently have at your Kings Point plant. So we are able to remove all of that equipment and go to 150s instead. It's a little bit more complicated for operators. It takes a little bit more time to manage that system. They're switching cylinders a little bit more, but it's smaller, less equipment cost, a little less cost from equipment, and it doesn't have the scrubber either. So that.
But you could add that later. You could go to larger cylinders and add a scrubber later.
You could add a bigger chlorine room on the front of the building later if you ever expanded the facility.
Yeah.
But based on the capacity of the plant, we felt comfortable that we could use 150-pound cylinders. We just have more of them. They're smaller, so the risk of a leak is less.
Didn't we just have a problem at the south treatment plant with the cylinders and had to replace them or do something with them?
Not the cylinders.
It wasn't the cylinders, it was the regulators.
Yeah, the regulators.
So it wasn't like a public safety concern, it was just chemical feed.
If there's a leak and you don't have the scrubbers, then what happens?
So.
You die. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
You'd work at the fire department.
Call the fire department.
What's the cost?
Essentially.
What's the cost
Of the scrubber?
of mitigating fixing it if there's a leak? This is $1.4 million that we're saving by now.
Right, so when you utilize 1-ton cylinders, if you would have a leak, the EPA and OSHA require risk management plans to have on record to manage that. So you work with the fire department and emergency staff to address it. That's why we typically recommend a scrubber if you have 1 tons, because of the amount of area that it would impact.
But the other thing is that it's one unit that's leaking.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a 150-pound unit, you have multiple units, the chances of all of them leaking at the same time are pretty much nil unless you, whatever. So you're thinking there's only one that's gonna leak, which is much smaller. So if you can kind of think of in that term.
It's a 1 ton it's got 1 ton of gas chlorine in it.
Right.
150-pound cylinder, you've got
150
pounds. So it's a factor of quite a bit less. So the sphere of impact is quite a bit smaller, which does not require EPA or OSHA.
Right.
Regulation.
What actually does the scrubber do? Sorry.
For $1.4 million.
Yeah, it takes the chlorine gas, sucks it into a unit and scrubs it.
So if there's a leak,
It removes it, so it's no longer.
Because So it's a gas.
Yeah.
So it's airborne then.
Oh, okay.
Chlorine tends to settle, so it kind of floats across the ground, but the scrubber essentially sucks in the gas and neutralizes it, so it's not. So we removed those. That's option D. We went to the smaller system, but that's still a 2,100 gallon unit water plant. Then to look at the steel filter options, I removed the concrete filters, and I added, for option C, I added 1 steel filter unit. That added $1.7 million, so that got us to 22.5. And then I added the second steel unit that we could add in the future if needed, and that got us to 24.5 million. So really, there was no benefit to go to the steel filter. So my recommendation is option D, which I came up with, is rather than building a 2,100 gallon per minute water plant, because if you remember the peaking factor for active is between 1,000 and 1,700. 1,700 would be a reasonable target that's conservative, that we don't change our behavior on peaking factor. We stay at a 3.6. We're still covered by 2050 for our demand. And it would allow us to reduce some concrete filter space. In addition to that, looking at the layout, so, and it's hard to see a little bit, but the filters on the left there, we have 2 sets of, so there's 4 filters, 2 on the left, 2 on the right. What we're recommending is get rid of the left treatment train and make 3 smaller filters on the right treatment train. So you're essentially reducing that much square footage of the facility, and so you reduce your square footage and you reduce your treatment capacity to 1,700 gallons a minute, ultimately cutting some cost from that option D that I showed you. So that is probably the best case scenario where we still get a capacity that we can work with. We reduce the cost of the facility a little bit more, and there will be plenty of space to the west to expand in the future if we want.
Plus, there will be more people on the system to pay for it. So that's the thing is, it's kind of a catch-22 or chicken before the egg, because now the existing people are actually going to help pay for future people, so that's why I'm really reluctant to build this so far out, to even 2050 seems like a lot, but I understand you don't really want to build it less, just because then you're building every 5 years or
2050 is very common
Yeah.
for treatment, when you're talking treatment plants that are designed to that.
With the smaller capacity, how much does that shorten the time period we have to repaint the other water tower?
No, it's the storage capacity.
It's the storage that's really
Cutting
the
the
next
storage capacity.
piece. So if you recall, I reduced the storage of the facility to 600,000 gallons. And what I would propose is the footprint of that clear well that's within the building footprint. What we're calling it the pumping chamber, that's about 200,000 gallons. Everything outside of the building would be an additional 400, so 600 total. We could bid the additional 400 as a bid alternate. It could be that's an easy design. that where we can have that, you can chop it off. And the contractor can give us a separate number for that additional 400,000 gallons of storage. I estimate it's probably about $1 million. We'll let the contractors actually tell us, but, so we could remove $1 million from the water plant cost by removing storage, but that again would submit, you'd have to invest that in future storage very soon after that.
No.
And again, building this water plant would allow us to rehab Kings Point Tower, right away.
With the 400,000.
If the plant's even online,
Yeah.
to be, so we have additional capacity.
Oh, okay.
Even without storage.
Yeah.
So to help, I guess, provide some context on what the storage means and when you might need additional storage. So.
But wait, to answer Peter's question then. So if we were to build, let's just say, with only the 200,000 gallon, let's just say, storage capacity, can we take the Kings Point water tower offline long enough to rehabilitate it?
You'll have enough pumping capacity at the new Minnetrista water plant to compensate for the loss in that storage for a short period.
Okay, so it'll still give us fire coverage. Okay.
Is it more expensive to do the 200,000 gallon pumping chamber and the 400 separate, or is it the same as if you just did one 600?
In one project or separate?
One project.
It shouldn't, well, it's gonna be more expensive to build more storage if that's what you're asking.
Like you're taking one big one and making two.
Oh.
So is that more expensive than just building the one
We
big
would
one?
typically do that in design anyways, so you can, so for maintenance in the future, so you can shut down a portion to inspect the clear well.
Right.
We would have some level of baffling and partitioning. So that's kind of a natural part of design. We would just bid it as an alternate so you get that in the future. So it doesn't really change.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to bid it as an alternate.
Yeah. It
Then we
allows
can
us to
see.
really see the cost.
I mean, and if it's $1 million, let's just say, and we're already talking 20 million, it's, you know,
Well, if
maybe
it's-
it's worth doing now.
Well,
So
yeah,
that
because it would
we
be
can at
cheaper
least
than
look at
doing,
it.
it would be cheaper than building a new tower, so.
But you could put a clear well, you could do the 400 gallon clear well underground storage in later.
You could add that after.
Right.
So you could build a 200,000 pumping chamber and then in a couple of years add the 400,000 in clear well.
But that would cost more than
It would
$1 million.
cost quite a bit more to
Right.
do it as a standalone project because now you're remobilizing, you're
Right.
re-excavating,
You're
you've got all the
re-excavating,
existing
right.
infrastructure. So we try to do as much as we can in one shot, but we understand sometimes you need to make.
I mean, if the 400,000 clear well storage came in at an additional 2 million, we might think twice about it, but maybe,
Yeah,
you know.
it's likely the cheapest storage you're going to purchase because it's got no coatings, it's
Right.
low grade, it doesn't have any aesthetics, it's very simple. It is gonna be the cheapest storage.
But, and so here was my other question. This is kind of getting, okay, so we could actually do an in-ground storage in the future as well. We don't need a tower necessarily.
Correct, you can build a GSR ground
Right,
storage reservoir
right.
pump station
Yeah.
anywhere in your system that would function the same as. what
As a
we're
tower.
talking about here.
Cost-wise, it might be a little bit less, but I think you have more ongoing expenses.
Yeah, you have the
maintenance
pumps,
costs,
electrical, and a small building that you have to maintain, so.
That's something we can look at in the future.
Oftentimes people go to ground storage reservoirs if there's aesthetic
Yeah.
concerns or they just don't want to look at it, or there's other hydraulic.
Right.
Things. So if we were looking at storage and your future need, and we assume we're at a 3.6 peaking factor, by 2035, if you have the 600,000 gallon clear well at the water plant and 2,100 gallons per minute of pumping, so we would put slightly larger pumps in, but still 1,700 gallons per minute of treatment, that would last you till 2035 for your storage,
That's it, 10 years?
10 years.
Not even, because it
At
won't be
your
live
current
until
peaking factor.
2026,
27, probably.
So not.
You're gonna be about 8 years of life
out.
out of it, and then you're gonna be at kind of assuming you stay at your peaking factor, 600 will hold you.
So then you might as well do the 200,
750.
do the 200 storage capacity. And then if you have to add storage in 8 years, then you might as well do, you know, more than.
So here's
Well, if you only do the 200, we need a tower basically right away. Yeah,
Right when this pipe comes on.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
and then I will quit.
I have good, yeah, so this is becoming.
I'm looking at all options. Come on,
And
people.
I caveat all this with a 3.6 peaking factor. You can change city behavior, this all gets quite a bit better,
Right.
but I'm not an optimist.
Okay.
Neither am I.
So by 2040, if you would be able to get to 2040 with your storage, if you build a 750,000 gallon clear well and you had a 2,100 gallon per minute water plant and 2,800 gallon per minute pump. So that would give you an additional additional 5 years of storage or of runway for storage. So again, you'd have to build the plant we've initially proposed. So that's a little bit more expensive. We don't get through the cost cutting and we stick with the larger clear well.
So we're
By 5 years of additional.
I think you should do the other one.
So
I'm more optimistic than you, Erin. I honestly, yeah.
I'm not. I think we should do B.
Here's the thing. We don't know how many new homes are going to be coming online. We don't know what 10 years. So you're saying with the 1,700 treatment, 600 storage, we're talking 10 years at least. Okay. We don't know what will happen there. And we don't know if the 3.6 is going to hold or if it's going to go down or whatever. And I don't want to saddle the existing users with that much debt.
I say this with all due respect. If we had built the south one before the incoming Woodland Cove, we wouldn't be having this problem. And we wouldn't be saddling the new users with it. We would already have been paying for it for the last 10 years. We would have an adequate one. I really, really don't want to save $1 million now and then.
It's more than $1 million. The million is just the difference with the clear well, not the larger scale. We're talking about 4 million.
From 23.2 to 21.8. Now, we're not doing the steel filters. It's too expensive. We're basically debating B and D right now. So between 23.2 and 21.8, to get us to 2040, where we won't have to add storage or build anything else related to water, I think it's worth the $1.45 million. And again, this is just an estimate, so it could be lower. And if I've noticed anything from all of our engineering estimates, they tend to be higher than what the bids come back at.
That's frustrating.
I'm pretty good at estimating, but I'm not a contractor, so.
It doesn't matter whether it's $1 million. What I'm hearing Erin telling us is that if we do the 600 gallon clear well, the 600,000, actually not 600, 600,000 gallon clear well, that'll take us out for storage to 2050.
No, 2035.
Wait, 2035.
8 years.
And with the 1,700 pumping capacity or filtering capacity, right? That takes us out to 2050.
That's what you need for the 2050 demand.
Right.
You'll still have additional storage needs for
Right.
between 2035 and 2050. Additional
We'll
storage.
have to build another tower or storage. If we do D, we need to build a new tower sometime around 2035, which means we're going to have to start planning it by 2031, 32 to get it online by 2035, correct? Am I right? So
It's about 2 years still.
if we do B, the more expensive, but not the most expensive, we're good till 2040, so we won't need to add any storage and storage discussions until 2037, 2038 to get it online in 2040.
So all in all, we're looking at like 30 million with everything.
No.
Not for this, but if we
Well,
have to add something else in
this doesn't
2035, we will.
So
But
the,
there's a lot of things that this doesn't include.
Yeah, like rehabbing the other water tower.
You're having a water tower
Removing.
and the 2 wells that we're drilling and engineering. This doesn't include engineering. This doesn't include all of the
This is
extra.
just the bid.
This is just the
Well,
bid.
it's not bad. This
Right.
is like 30 minutes.
Upside.
So I guess just
Right.
just to kind of some details. So the option B is also a larger chlorine system. So we could reduce the chlorine system and remove. So the clear well reduction is about 400,000. So that 23.2 is really 22.8. So
If we go to 600.
if you go to, yeah, you stuck with the 6.
But all options are with the 600, well, not all, but
No, we
the,
Do we need the larger chlorine system with the 750?
should. The building the 750,000 gallon clear well does not really get you anything unless you build additional treatment capacity. So they kind of go in.
right,
So you're going to do option B with the reduced chlorine system at 22.8 million, or option D with the 600,000 gallon clear well and reduced chlorine system, and we would cut the treatment train off. So we bring option D down a little bit more by doing that. Probably closer to 20.
So if I can
okay.
compartmentalize
Yes,
this a little
please.
bit.
Thank you.
So do we want, for storage, let's just talk about that
Right.
piece. Do we want the 600 or the 750?
750.
So you, in the slide that we had, we talked about, it's a kind of sensitivity analysis. If we flatten the curve on the peaking factor, what does our storage need look like if we are able to bring that down?
Even if we didn't.
Yeah, I think if you go back a few.
2.6, if it's down to 3,
Yeah,
You know?
like split the difference.
Yeah.
3.2.
right,
Then we wouldn't need more storage
So-
in 2040. We would
If
be
you're-
able to keep what we have even longer without needing more.
right.
So we would be good. We could push the 2040 date with the 750 even farther out.
Well, there's a point too where, like Aaron is saying, 25 years is kind of what you want. Anything more than that, you're looking at a lot of cost to maintain it and to repair it and maintenance and things like that.
But if we can get our peaking factor down and push out needing any treatment, anything on the south system until 2050, which is 25 years, that would be great. I mean, that would be ideal if we can get the peaking factor down and then we put the 750 in and we don't need anything for 25 years on the south system.
If you put the 750 in, you'd also need to build the 20.
Yeah.
See, and so, but what I'm wondering, so you have, you don't do the 750 storage without the 2100 filters. So you either do the 1700 with the 600, or you do 2100 for the 750. And the 750 and the 21 and 750 makes sense for 2050, but we don't have the people to support that. That's my concern. That's my concern. And then we have to have 100 homes a year. We have to have that. So then you're under that gun. And so if you say, as Brian was asking, if you say we're not at that 3.6 peaking factor, let's say we're somewhere in between the 2.6 and the 3.6, that could still take us out with a 1700 and 600 storage. That could still take us out to 2035 or 2040, probably closer to 2040. By that time, we would know and see what we have in terms of people and homes and developments. I don't know. It's kind of like gambling. I wish we had a crystal ball. But
It's not an easy decision. I think the struggle is anything you do as a second phase is going to be more expensive. And that's the big decision that needs to be made is, are you willing to kick that part of the can down the road and pay more when you need it, or invest in it now, but it's going to hurt to invest in it now?
Again, this is insane amounts of money, and I don't say this lightly, but for $1.5 million right now, it seems worth not spending 5 down the road, because it's not going to be cheaper. And in the scheme of 23 versus 21 or 22 and 20, whatever, that's not that much money. like, all of it's over 20, so it's all expensive. So one more million on it is not, it's like 20 cents on a dollar. Like, it's not that much when you look at the whole scheme of it.
What happens if we don't get 100 people a year?
Then those of us who are on water will be paying a lot, but we're gonna be paying a lot anyways, whether it's 23 million or 21 million. My bill is going up a lot.
Yeah, way up.
Or go up to the point where that growth, it will hamper that growth.
Hamper the growth, that's the question, yeah.
I don't think so.
People were pretty upset, a couple of years ago when it was going around with the Cove. They're very clear that that was their number one issue, and some people would be behind. Don't raise it.
And I say this with all due respect, they didn't stop using the water though. They complain left and right about the bills, but our peaking factor is still 3.4.
Yeah, no, I
So,
agree with, I'm just saying that this is going to be a huge increase no matter what we do. And people are really going to be up in it. That's why I think these town hall meetings are going to be critical.
oh yeah.
And,
I think we should.
and if I may, we, depending on the direction, we may have an opportunity to bid some ad alternates that can help right size this at the time. What we really want to accomplish tonight is just to continue that path forward to get to bidding. And if the direction, and Aaron and I have talked, is to have the base bid be this, and then have an ad alternate of this, and then maybe another third option, that would get us to continue to design, which we need to do, right? There's a lot of things that need to happen between now and May or June when we would bid. But we need to keep going. We kind of need that direction. So I think from what I'm hearing is, we're somewhere in between this option E, which is the 1,700 and maybe 600,000 clear well with the smaller chlorine system, up to the kind of a hybrid of D, which is the 2,100 with 750 and the smaller chlorine system. I think we're kind of smaller chlorine system.
System is not that much.
Yeah.
Versus the, I mean,
Oh,
and
there
then
you go.
there's some.
Yeah. So
Let's do that and make more storage.
So my question,
And that's what I would recommend. Here is bigger storage, but reduce the chlorine regardless.
okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, so we're saying 600 and 1,700 and 600. Is there a possibility to have like an alternate bid for the 21?
No,
No.
because that'd be two big packages.
Yeah.
It'd be like configuring two different buildings,
Yeah,
basically.
Because if you recall, when we would lop off that whole west
Right,
side.
right.
So, and we reconfigure those buildings we are built, so it gets really complicated.
I mean, I totally get what Kathleen is saying. I wish we knew, I mean, if you look at the numbers here in your packet, if we have to bond for 25 million, we're talking a 94.26% increase over 3 years. That's a 30% increase in water rates over the next 3 years. So,
And that, if I may, and that's assuming no growth. So if we grow at 100 homes a year, that could go down. We'd have to factor that in, but that's just a snapshot in time of right now,
Well, and we
based
can-
on the revenue we
We've been
generate.
increasing the connection fees. So,
we'll have to
Oh, sorry,
talk
yeah.
about
So
that,
there's
but I'm
ways
just
of-
saying, just so we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So Jasper, we were chatting today, it's like $700 a household more for the units.
So we have about 2,200 accounts. And let's just use a round number of $22 million because it's easy. 'Cause it's $10,000 per account over 20 years plus interest. So take that into account. It's basically $500 to $700, probably like $700 a year
a year.
for 20 years,
Yeah, that's
in addition to what they're paying right now.
It's pleasures.
All right, so we need to wrap this up. And we are, I mean, so, Brian, where are you at? I know you're really good at digging into this stuff. Right, where are you at with them?
So what we talked about now was basically between B and D, is that
basically 1,700 with 600 storage or 2,100 with 750 storage. Both options would still have the smaller cylinders for chlorine.
Yes, so B would be 22.2 million if you do the smaller chlorine. And D would be 21.8. So you're basically getting, I think, another 150,000 in the clear well for, what is that? $400,000, which gets us for sure out to 2050. Maybe longer if we get our peaking factor down.
Sorry. The spreadsheet with all the peaking factors, is that a workable document where you can put in, like, you can send it and type in like 3.4 and 3.6? What is 3.6? Not right now, but,
Yes, yeah.
you know, where you send it to Jasper and then he can forward it, so we can all play around with numbers.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think he's looking for some directions tonight.
No, I know.
That's the thing, so, right, no, I know. So I guess that,
Yes.
so,
What was Brian?
Brian,
What's the question again?
B or D?
Yeah.
B or D?
Pick a letter.
Yeah.
B, D, or E. I would say E is an option too. I mean, it's at 1.7. You just have to be okay with future conversations about potential water system expansion. Just be aware of it. If we do build a lot more houses, or maybe we're at 100 or more, then that time will come sooner than later for that additional storage. So just be prepared for that conversation if you go with an E. D or B, the 600,000 to 750,000, that really addresses the storage need until at least 2040, assuming a 3.6 peaking factor, which we hope we can get down so it gets us to 2050, which is 25 years.
See, I think going out to 2040 is kind of the route we should go. Because I think otherwise we're just straddling too much debt for the existing users. And we don't know, I mean, we're talking 15 years from now. We don't know what prices are gonna do, what interest is gonna do, what housing is gonna do. That's kind of my.
Do you want to do B then? B gets
Whatever.
us to 2040. D gets us to 2035.
Yeah, so it's 8 years.
Yeah.
I think you're right, yeah.
So if you.
So the 750 gets us.
750, we have to do the 750 to get us to 2040. And then if we get our peaking factor down, we can push it to 2050, which would be another 10 years, which would be awesome. Because then we wouldn't need to discuss that till, 2046.
And that's kind of where I'm at. Does that make sense? With whatever the 2040.
Yeah.
That's B.
And that's the 23 million.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, the 22 point something.
it'd be 22.2 if we go to the smaller chlorine system.
Let's see,
And more storage.
22.2, larger clear well, larger treatment capacity, small chlorine, gets you as far as you can on storage and treatment.
I'm sorry, I should ask this question already in the first slide, but does the Metro Council estimates jive with your guys' experience?
Well, that's a whole different conversation. They've really, so for their 2050 plan, they've reduced us a little bit as far as our rate of growth, but they've done that to the whole metro area as a whole. That rate of growth is decreasing, is what they're projecting. Now, they're projecting that we're only going to build 35 houses, as you get closer to 2050. I don't know. I mean, maybe they know something we don't know, but we have available land, we have infrastructure. I don't think we're going to get down to 35. That was more like, and David can fill in, that's like post 2009, 2010 times. But they're saying that's going to be the existing, basically from 30 to 50.
So the short is that you feel like the Metro Council has a conservative estimate that we make.
I would say their current projected Imagine 2050 plan, yes, I would. That's what I would say. Because it's 35 houses. It's on average between 2030 and 2050, 35 houses a year.
What are the 2040 plans?
It had us at 14,400 for 2040. So they've really taken a step back, and we've asked them, and they haven't really given us a clear answer.
But they're increasing our density requirements. So
Yes, things aren't jiving.
Yeah, that's
So yeah,
You can put more clothes, but you're gonna have.
We're gonna wrap this up in about 3 minutes.
That makes me feel like a little bit better than their estimates are overly conservative estimate of more learning local folks.
Yeah. Well, so their estimate has come down significantly for us.
Here's the other thing. Let me ask you this, Erin, if we go out for bid with the 750 storage capacity, also 2,100 filtering capacity, and it comes back, I mean, way high, what would it take to reduce it to go back to the 17 and 600? What would it cost to do that and actually scale it back? Well, you kind of have half of it re-engineered right now, don't you?
Well, we've sketched out, different options, kind of estimated based on that, but we essentially have to redesign the filters and the clear pump.
Because I'm just worried that if this comes in, and let's say it's rather than 22.8 or 23, and it comes in at 28, then what are we gonna do?
The drawing.
That's what I'm asking is, what is it gonna cost? It's gonna cost us another $1 million just to redraw it, if you will. So that's the other consideration. I'm sorry.
With any of them though, I mean, even if we do E, like they could come back astronomically high.
That was, early on, we talked about CMAR. That is kind of the benefit, is you avoid getting that far down that path.
Right.
And being just like shocked by price, right, as they give you costs. So if we truly have that concern, we should bring a contractor on board before we bid it and actually get a ballpark estimate. And we can do that and just have them estimate like a 75% of the plans, or even bringing them down for a little bit, we look at it in a little more detail, give us a better estimate, so we're not shocked. I mean, that would.
How much would that cost?
$10,000.
Yeah,
It would be.
I like that idea, because I'm just afraid that we're gonna get sticker shock, and then we're gonna go, oh my gosh, what can we do now? So,
We can do that. We have a couple of contractors we can contact and get numbers on what they would charge to estimate.
I know that might kind of put us out a few more weeks, but
Yeah, that's.
re-engineering. Yeah. You guys, do you like that idea?
What, if I may, sorry, I think we can do, I mean, it sounds like we're leaning more towards a B.
Yes.
To get us to 2040. I think we can just say, Aaron, get the estimate, get the contractor to do the estimate, start continuing to design B, and we can keep going in conjunction with it, just so we don't delay it. We've already kind of delayed it about a month or so from the bid when we were, I want to get started this summer, fall, otherwise we kind of get into the point where we could have,
All right.
so I think we can do it in conjunction, I guess, is long story short.
All right, we'll do that.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that.
No. And you're still not fired. All right. With that, we need to be adjourned because there's a little open house for our police officer that's being sworn in. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Lacey. Rustin made the second. All in favor, signify by aye. All opposed, motion passes.
It's a discussion,
We are adjourned.
Or just do it at staff report.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can do that.
Because she knows all.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
During staff reports,
Yes,
I want to talk a little bit about the wedding venue.
yes, okay.
And see if we can get some direction as far as what we want to do, especially with that permit, or just say no, just some direction. Because we don't have a meeting for a month. We were going to try to work it in here, but I think we ran out of time.
See y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, the farm winery. Well, no.
A neighbor wants to get married there. Did. And it's, as you can imagine, caused a stir amongst the neighborhood now, because she did the right thing and tried to reach out to everyone and say, I want to do this. My daughter wants to get married there. And